Greetings everyone, my name is Dominic and today you're tuning in to the Comic Book Report, where we review comic books and graphic novels so you can get an idea of what to read. And today I'm dropping this video on Valentine's Day. And in observation of this holiday of love, I wanted to showcase some of my favorite romantic comics I've ever read. Those of course coming from the Marvel Colors series by Jeph Loeb and Tim Sale, particularly Hulk Gray, Daredevil Yellow, and Spider-Man Blue. Yes, they also wrote Captain America White in this series, but that was more about a friendship between Steve Rogers and Bucky Barnes, whereas these three really emphasized this kind of lost love relationship between these heroes and their paramours. Before we go too much further in this video though, I do want to shout out our channel sponsor, OrganicPriceBooks.com. If you're looking to pick up your own comic book collected editions, I highly encourage you to check out their website. You can find a link to it in this video's description, and if you see something you like, you can even use my discount code at checkout, TheComicBookReport, to save $2 off of your order. Please note if you use my affiliate link or code to make a purchase, I will earn a small commission, but it's a fantastic way to support this channel. Thank you for considering. Now let's get back to our coverage. I was trying to think of a way to celebrate Valentine's Day on the channel. I was trying to think of maybe a top 5 list of romantic moments in comics that I liked or couples that I enjoyed. But ultimately, I just found myself gravitating back towards Jeph Loeb and Tim Sale's works here. And honestly, I'm really happy to be revisiting them today for you all in this video. Now, I did review each of these 3 titles on the channel previously throughout the history of this channel. But I was really just drawn back, like I said, because I like their approach to love in the Marvel Universe. We get to really focus on some of these couples that really help define these characters in many ways, and each of these works is really a throwback to the Silver Age of comics when these characters first kind of debuted. There's a lot of really tender kind of homages to that period in comic book history, and I think it's really lovingly handled by both of these creators, and I really just think a lot of the love stories we see in these pages are just really sweet, and I'm really excited to just revisit them briefly and kind of unpack a little bit for you. I'll try to go lighter on spoilers for those that haven't read these works, but let's go ahead and get started. First up today, I want to look at Hulk Gray, again by Jeph Loeb and Tim Sale. This book really grew on me. I think the first time I read this, out of these 3, this was my least favorite, and it might still hold that spot, but honestly, my estimation of it has gone up dramatically every time I've approached this book or reread it in any fashion, because I see a lot more nuance here than I first captured in that first reading. One of my favorite facets of it, like these other works, we have this really fun frame narrative. In this case, it's actually like kind of a psychiatry or therapy session that Bruce Banner is undergoing. And that takes place presumably in the modern day or the present, and he's kind of recollecting these things that happened when he first became the Hulk, in addition to the early flirtations with his love interest, Betty Ross. I really just like how this whole thing is set up. When the present day narrative has that therapy session, everything is really black and white, and there's this kind of detective noir quality. You know, we have the shuttered blinds with the light coming through it. Like I said, the art is very black and white, and we have little shots of green, kind of illustrating the Hulk's anger or emergence in his psyche. Really like how this was handled, and that all cues up these kind of flashback sequences as he recollects. These sequences are all in full color, and this is where most of the narrative takes place, around that kind of narrative frame. And in this, we have not only the origin of the Hulk, where he gets caught in the gamma ray bomb explosion and he mutates into the Gray Hulk, but we also, again, have him kind of fending off different other Marvel supporting characters, heroes, things like that. And I just think this was really fun. I think for fans of the Silver Age, particularly those first like 5 or 6 issues of the Hulk, there are some very clear homages and kind of reinterpretations of those early issues specifically, and I really love that. We also have some profoundly moving sequences where the Hulk is really into Betty Ross because she sees kind of the Hulk compassionately in the midst of everything else, and there's this really like just sweet tenderness that the Hulk has toward Betty. And I just love this idea that we see the blossoming of this romance, at least from the position of the Hulk, but we have this just inherent tragedy in the love story, and we have it just based in the fact of how horrendously haunted this primary character is. And again, having that frame narrative to kind of wrap around and everything's just in the past, we really just know that this doesn't end in the way that the Hulk hopes, but he's remembering fondly and also not so fondly this time where his life was basically cursed, and the beauty he saw within it when he's, again, having these interactions with Betty Ross. I think the art in this is absolutely jaw-dropping. It's really beautiful, and I think to have Hulk gray, like the original Hulk when this first started, before he turned green, it just really makes him stand out in these pages when everything around him is so full color. To have him in grayscale, it's not only just really attention-getting, but it kind of understates the Hulk, who is this massive monster. It's just a really interesting juxtaposition, and it just works for me. I think that Sale's art is really stylish here, and it really helped me just grip into this character in a brand new way. Perfect for new readers, and a great, great love story. Next on the list, we're going to be talking about one of my personal favorites here, Daredevil Yellow by Jeph Loeb and Tim Sale. Whether you're new to this channel or maybe a returning watcher, Daredevil is my all-time favorite superhero character. I really just love this character. I think he's such a marvelous set of contradictions, how he enacts justice both with the law and above the law, just his kind of religious undertones but dressing as a devil. It's just a really interesting character that's just inherently conflicted. I think a lot of his narratives are so character driven and fascinating. The action is fantastic. Anyway, great character, some epic character runs. But for today's purposes, going back specifically to Daredevil Yellow, like what I just said with Hulk Gray, this is another love story, kind of lovingly throwing back to the Silver Age origins of this character. The frame narrative here is him just remembering his first love that was presented in the comics, Karen Page. And we have not only the Daredevil origin story, how he became this crusader, his first costume having, of course, this yellow before he dons his traditional red or sometimes black costume. Anyway, it's really, really fun here. We get to see some of the zaniness of those early Silver Age Daredevil villains. I do think that Daredevil really hit his stride after the run with Frank Miller. Not that there weren't great issues of Daredevil before then, but I think that this really showcases what some of the villains were for Daredevil before we got more of, like, you know, Kingpin and Bullseye and everything with the Hand and Elektra. Anyway, this is really a simpler time for Daredevil and a more streamlining of his origin. This is before we have Stick and all of that stuff. But it's a really great story here, and we know in the present that Karen Page is no longer with us. That happens in a more modern Daredevil storyline where she unfortunately passes away. But this is Daredevil remembering her, and it's interesting because he's someone who is himself blind. He encounters the world and her with these other senses. And I think that we see some of that in the storytelling. I think Jeph Loeb handles that really, really well, and just seeing how we understand kind of this love from more than just a physical perspective. I mean, I know that we see the character model ourselves as we read, but just to see how Daredevil encounters Karen Page with being without sight, it's just really a fun, like, addition to that love story in many ways to me. I love the exploration of this character, and I think in this character that is always so tragic, haunted, and guilt-ridden himself, to go back to the Silver Age and the sweet moments of his infatuation with Karen Page and their flirtation with one another, I guess it's just nice to see this character with a little bit more levity, and that does happen in different Daredevil runs, like Mark Waid's in particular, had some of this levity recaptured, but I think here we really see it on full display. Something about these Marvel Colors books, not only do we get these fantastic love stories, but they're really a fun entry point for these characters if you're not really well versed in their origins, or you don't want to go back and read the Silver Age issues. Honestly, Loeb and Sale capture so lovingly what make the Silver Age so great, but in a more modern style and sensibility. You don't feel as bogged down in some of the narrative density that we got in the Silver Age, just all the word balloons and not really as much modern storytelling techniques. We have a modernization, but it's so clearly a throwback. And last but certainly not least, I wanted to spend a few minutes talking about Spider-Man Blue. This might be the cream of the crop for me of these Marvel Colors books that I've read. I am a sucker for Spider-Man as well. I am a huge fan, and I've always really loved the tragic nature of the loss of Gwen Stacy. His first real big love interest before characters like Mary Jane Watson were really capturing his heart. His was completely held by the beautiful Gwen Stacy. And I really like the frame narrative. in this book quite a bit. We have him on the anniversary of her death kind of laying a flower down on the place where she fell, the place where these things happened. And then we have him returning to his home where he's with his wife, Mary Jane, and he goes up to the attic and kind of makes these voice recordings to remember and eulogize Gwen Stacy. And so everything's from his perspective, and we have him flashing back. In the same way, the psychiatry session in Whole Gray, we have Spider-Man himself recording these tapes for Gwen and kind of talking to Gwen about the times where he first became Spider-Man, first fell in love, and that's just that period of his life. I think why this frame narrative is so beautiful is that we have, again, it's rooted in his perspective. The fact that he's talking to Gwen is really something special as well. And then we have Mary Jane Watson in the present interacting with Peter Parker, her husband, Spider-Man, and it's really profound in how they both grieve for this lost friend in the person of Gwen Stacy. And I won't spoil that aspect as well for those that haven't read this storyline, but it is really touchingly done. So Gwen Stacy was lost in his crime-fighting pursuits at one point, and this is at a period in his life where he was still young and kind of an up-and-coming Spider-Man, and these flashback sequences have some of his early forays, fighting a lot of his rogues gallery of villains in full Technicolor beauty, and we have that so easily shown here on the pages that Tim Sale helps just create this world in front of us, and we have just really the flirtation and love just beginning to blossom between Gwen Stacy and Peter Parker. I really just love it. It's so sweet, and again, it's so very haunted and tragic. There's this beautiful melancholy to this whole book, and I just think it's so romantic and striking. I've always been a fan of this work, and I think it's perfect for new readers, like the other entries in this video, because it's a great way to throw back to the Silver Age, the classic early eras for these characters, but in a much more modern way, and with a tighter focus. I think these are really good as standalone graphic novels. You have a good beginning, middle, and end, and they're just really good, tragic love stories that have a lot of heart. I think in many ways, this has the most optimistic or beautiful ending in my mind. This or maybe Daredevil, but just some beautiful stuff here. I really enjoy flipping through the pages here. I always love when I get to reread these Marvel Colors books. I'm hoping to finally track down Captain America White and pick up a copy. I can't believe I haven't read that yet. But these three are really the romance Marvel Color books, and I just wanted to spend some time showcasing them because I just think they're so well done. These paperbacks might be out of print, but you can still find them on secondary marketplaces, and I know they released gallery editions, I believe, for all three of these books in the last year or so after we lost this incredible talent in Tim Sale. So definitely try to track down these books if these look interesting, or you can watch my full coverage reviews of these three titles. And just like that, that's our quick look at the Marvel Colors romance books from Jeph Loeb and Tim Sale over here at Marvel Comics. These two are just an immense creative team with so much talent. Also a huge fan of their work at DC with The Long Halloween and Dark Victory, if you've never read those. But these books really offer something special, and for Valentine's Day, I wanted to find something beautiful to recommend to all of you, especially if these books have not made it onto your radar yet, or you're looking for something new to pick up that you hadn't heard of. I hope you consider these. They're really wonderful books. In the comments below, if you could just recommend what are some of your favorite Marvel or DC or just comics in general, the love stories, romances, what are maybe your comic book Valentine's Day reads? I'd love to hear all of that below. Thank you for taking the ride with me, and until next time, this has been the Comic Book Report. Please don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, and maybe check out one of my other videos. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a good one.